Today's webinar is about how to mitigate currency and payment risks when trading with China. So Crayfish's weekly webinar series are designed to be very light, short, but helpful in terms of practical takeaway for your business. So that's what we're going to cover today. It's very much practical about the operation side of the payment risk and the currency and process. So my name is Ting Zhang. I'm the founder and CEO of Crayfish.io. I'm also involved in a number of roles to promote UK-China trade and also better understanding of China in the UK wider society. And for those new to Crayfish, Crayfish is a digital platform providing business with quality services and global connections, currently with a focus on Asia, especially China. We are reinventing the way in which organizations procure business services when doing business across other countries. In that we have a smart platform that effectively is a 7/24 online exchange where companies can access essential business and professional services that they may require in order to expand internationally. So we do that through a range of different services. One is that you can buy pre-scoped fixed prices services online. These are very good value and service guaranteed by Crayfish. Alternatively, you can use also a marketplace where you can invite service providers that have been vetted by Crayfish to bid directly for your projects. And then we do offer tailored services for those clients who need more support or for more sophisticated projects. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker today, Isabel Ye. Isabel, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone.
And Isabel is Director of China Initiatives at eBury, and she will talk to you about more what eBury does. But eBury is a partner of ours. We also use eBury for our own foreign exchange payments. So Isabel is responsible for managing all the initiatives on the China West Corridor in eBury. She has more than 10 years experience working internationally for McKinsey in Spain. And she also did her undergrad in business and law from Madrid University as well.
Thanks a lot, Tim, for the introduction and also for inviting me to be part of the session today, which is a great honor for me. So let me share my slides. Can you all see what I'm presenting?
Yeah.
Okay, so to share a bit about what our company does. So we provide financial solutions to companies that trade cross-border, basically importers and exporters. And our target is to help all these companies to be able to work without borders. Today, I'll be sharing about how we can transact better with China, both from the perspective of an UK importer that is buying from China, but also from the exporter side, a company that is selling or looking to sell to China. The aim of this session, I want this to be as useful as possible to all of the attendees here. So if you have any questions that you feel I haven't covered through my session, please feel free to address it in the Q&As, as we'll be leaving some good amount of time to address all the Q&As, or we can discuss later through email. So without further delay, let me go through my slides. I want to start first with differentiating what are the different denominations of the local currency that is used in China, the RMB, because this is something that confuses a lot of people. So actually, the common denomination that the local currency yuan has in China is renminbi yuan, which is the RMB. But this is not the denomination of how it is traded in the currency market. We can actually find three different denominations. CNY. So this is the denomination of the RMB that is traded purely inside China, which doesn't include Hong Kong or Macau. So this rate, the CNY rate against all the major currencies, it's daily fixed by PBOC based on a basket of currencies that the RMB is linked to. And every day, how the CNY fluctuates in China cannot go beyond the range that the PBOC, the Central Bank of China, has set. So this is deliverable inside China, and it can be only cleared through CNAPS or CIPS, which is like the cross-border RMB settlement system. So for CNY non-deliverable and CNH, both these two denominations, they refer to the Chinese currency that is traded outside China, and outside China includes Hong Kong and Macau for these purposes. So the differences between CNY non-deliverable and CNH is that the CNY non-deliverable, you cannot settle directly in RMB, but you have to settle the equivalent amount in USD. Whereas for the CNH, this is free float, of course, because it's outside China and it's fully deliverable. And what happens is that this differentiation between CNY, CNY non-deliverable, and CNH is purely depending on where the currency is trading and where you're getting the liquidity. So the rates are always a little bit different, but not a major difference. But when this currency crosses the borders, so either when you pay from outside to China, or when a Chinese is paying you from China to the UK, for instance, the currency will convert automatically. So it's not that if you are paying from UK to China, you're paying CNH, but then once it crosses its borders, it's automatically CNY, and the exchange rate is 1-to-1. So there's not any other conversion rate implied, because at the end of the day, we are talking about the same currency. So having said that, I want to start with walking you through what has been the evolution of the RMB currency. So for the purposes of my presentation, because I don't want to create confusion between the different denominations of how the RMB is traded, I'll try to speak commonly about RMB, renminbi yuan. Here in this chart, you can see what has been the evolution of the RMB in the last 10 years. So for this purpose, I have used actually the dollar CNY rate. So what you can see is that we have basically differentiated between two different phases. So before 2016, RMB was actually pegged to USD. And USD was the common currency used for cross-border trade between China and the West. So if you were an importer buying from China, the suppliers were not really looking into invoicing in RMB or using any other currency other than the USD. But then as China's economy grew, and then their international role became more and more important as well, October 2016 was actually a major milestone, because that was when the RMB, the Chinese yuan, became part of the basket of currencies of the International Monetary Fund. That was actually a very important milestone, because it was quite a few years that there hasn't been any currency added to this basket of special drawing rights of the International Monetary Fund. And also the RMB no longer was pegged only to USD, but it became pegged to a basket of currencies that included G3 currencies, Swiss franc, and Japanese yen as well. So from that on, if you look at what has been the evolution of the dollar CNY through the last 5-6 years, there has been much more up and downs, and the RMB movements were no longer completely explained by the movements in USD. So here I have highlighted some major up and downs that we had. So if you're an importer or exporter, you probably have experienced this, because in April 2018, for instance, dollar CNY dropped to the lowest level since 2014. At that time, 1 USD could only exchange for 6.25 RMB. Then afterwards, because of the increasing trade tensions between China and the US, and because of the tariffs imposed by the US, actually the RMB depreciated quite a lot, and it peaked in August 2019 when one USD could exchange up to 7.15. So what you could see, if we look at the lowest and the highest points, the dollar RMB rate has fluctuated actually beyond 10%. And especially in the last 12 months, there has been also quite a lot of volatility, which we could cover in the following slides. At the same time, this is also created because of the increasing internationalization of RMB that China has been pushing. So here, I have tried to show what has been the major milestones in this internationalization process. So I'm not gonna stop into any of these ones, but I want to highlight October 2016, which is what I just explained about RMB becoming part of the basket of currencies of the International Monetary Fund. And then from 2018, we have seen how the regulators in China, especially the central bank, PBOC, has been releasing different guidelines to promote the cross-border use of RMB for its corporates. So there was one guideline that we saw at the beginning of 2018. So this is the number 5 milestone, where basically the People's Bank of China talk about different ways that the RMB could use in international ways. And one of them was to use it when you are importing or exporting with counterparties in the West. Then recently, at the end of last year, there was a guideline called Notice on Further Optimizing the Cross-Border RMB Policy to Support Stabilizing Foreign Trade and Foreign Investment. So that's the number 7. So in this guideline, one of the things that it says is that for the corporates that wanted to directly receive RMB from their clients in the West, if this is a Chinese supplier that is selling to a UK company, for instance. Previously, it wasn't as smooth receiving USD versus receiving RMB. So receiving USD, because that has been the normal way of doing things, it was pretty straightforward with the bank in China that the supplier was using. But then when they receive RMB, actually, they needed to physically go to the branch, submit a lot of documentation. So for a lot of suppliers in China, they find it a bit burdensome. So they kind of prefer to stick to the current status quo. This guideline, the aim was to make much more smooth the process of receiving RMB through the bank and allowing the corporates to directly submit the required documentation related to the trade directly on an online basis without having to go to the bank's branch each time. So this guideline was issued at the end of last year, and it actually came into full force starting February of this year. Although like in practical terms, because we negotiate on a daily basis with a lot of suppliers in China of our clients, the feedback that these suppliers have been giving us is that depending on the bank that we're talking about in China and also on the region, this policy has been implemented in a lower or higher degree. As part of this internationalization of RMB, right? And I was mentioning as well the increasing volatility that we have seen. We're forecasting not only our expert analysts at IBRI, but also major banks, that the RMB is gonna continue its strengthening trend towards the USD especially, but also towards Euro and cable. So the reason of this, partly it's because there is a recent environment. There has been a rollout of vaccines for COVID-19, as we know, and this is also gonna help some developing economies that have been lagging behind to catch up, and that's why there's gonna be a more risk-proactive environment. And on the other hand, on the yuan side, we foresee that the trend of the yuan is gonna continue appreciating. Actually, the Chinese yuan, previously it was deemed as an emerging market currency, but more and more the international investors are seeing the RMB more as an international currency, same way than cable, USD, or Euro. Also, as we all know, because the Chinese economy has been one of the quickest to rebound from COVID-19, also because of the strict measures that was imposed. And also, like, the economy has been showing good macroeconomic forecasts and a good resource in terms of GDP. So that's why, all in all, we see that the RMB is going to continue its strengthening trend. Actually, what the analysts at IBRI, what we're forecasting is that by the end of this year, dollar RMB could go as low as 6.25, which is the level that it was in April 2018. And by the end of next year, dollar RMB could be as low as 6. So this is the reason why we're seeing that more and more companies that are buying from China, so importers working with suppliers in China, they're also turning to transacting in RMB. And this is actually one of the main initiatives from here at IBRI, that we're also helping our clients, the buyers, and also their suppliers to have a smooth process in changing from USD to RMB. So what are the major reasons for this to happen? From a supplier's perspective, one of the main reasons is to be able to protect against the fluctuation of dollar RMB. So as I was saying in one of my slides at the beginning, previously, because RMB was pegged to the USD, that was not really a factor that was considered by the suppliers. And because this factor of RMB fluctuating more and more against USD is something still relatively new, most of the suppliers in China, they are not really used to hedge. Also, like the hedging solutions they could get from their banks in China are actually quite limited. So what that translates into is that if you're a UK importer that buys from China, if you're paying in USD, expect that most of the times your supplier, they're not gonna hedge themselves against dollar RMB. So most probably you will be exposed to how the dollar RMB moves, especially when the RMB strengthens, which is what we've been experiencing in the last 12 months. So actually, the fact that the supplier is able to directly invoice you in their own currency, it's actually a big plus, knowing that you, as an importer in the UK, are able to hedge directly the RMB risk, and they don't need to worry about it. And they don't need to factor this as something in their USD prices. Also, what we have seen is that throughout the last 12 months, because of the increasing appreciation of the dollar RMB rate, a lot of suppliers have been increasing prices. And obviously, for the importers, this is one more factor to add to the already difficult situation of increasing in raw materials, increasing in the freight costs, which is all adding to the current cost of importing from China. Then from the buyer side, what are the benefits, right? So if I'm a UK importer, why would I switch from buying in USD, which is what I'm used to buying in RMB? So one of the main reasons is to ensure that you're gonna get stable prices and to avoid the one-way risk, which is something that I will go into detail in my next slide. By paying in RMB, you're able to control the full FX risk. Because I was saying previously, if you, as an importer, most probably you will be hedging in some degree your exposure GBP to USD, and then you take for granted that you are already protected against the FX risk. But actually, that's not the case, because as we said, the suppliers, they are mostly not hedging the risk. So that means that you're still directly exposed to how dollar RMB would be moving. So by paying directly in RMB, you're ensuring that you can fully manage the full foreign exchange risk, and you're not at the expense of hoping that the suppliers would hedge or that they would manage the risk themselves. Also, by asking your supplier to give you the price in RMB, because that's actually their base currency, you're going to ensure that you have the most competitive prices and you have full transparency on, okay, So these prices that the supplier is giving me, if they say they're increasing my prices, is it because of the increase in raw materials, to which degree? And to which degree is it because of the impact of the FX? Because the reality is that right now, a lot of our clients, before they switch to paying into RMB, the supplier would just say, look, there has been a combination of factors, and that's why I need to increase your prices, because my raw material costs have increased a lot, and I have been negatively impacted by the FX. But we have no idea which is because of what and to what degree. So even though paying in RMB is not going to solve all the problems, at least it's one factor that you're taking away from the equation, which we can control in some way. So going back to what I was mentioning about the one-sided or one-way risk that the buyers are currently exposed if they are paying in a foreign currency, normally in USD. So this is actually a real case from one of our clients in Portugal. What we're showing here is what has been the evolution of the dollar CN8 during 2020. Here I'm showing dollar CN8 because basically as a buyer from outside China, this is the liquidity and the rates that you would have access to. So if we look at what has been the evolution of this exchange rate in the 12 months of 2020. So at the beginning of the year, $1 could exchange for 6.97. So to make it easy, let's say the Portuguese buyer, they're buying one product from China that costs for the supplier in their base price, it's actually 697 yuan. And then the Portuguese client asks for prices at the beginning of the year, and then the supplier look at what's the rate of that time, 6.97, and then they directly divide 697 between 6.97 to get 100 USD, which is what they give to the client. So this is actually to be a bit more conservative, because the reality is that normally the suppliers would price a buffer into the USD prices. So previously they've been using a rate of around 6.8, so slightly below the market, so that they ensure if the exchange rate fluctuates within certain range, they are protected against the FX risk. But here, just to be a bit conservative, we'll say that the supplier directly gives the clients the USD price based on the rate at that moment, which is 6.97. So you have a price of 100. So the Portuguese client pays then 100 throughout the months, and then let's say they make a payment in May of 100. So because the exchange rate at that time, the RMB was still depreciating, one USD could exchange for 7.17 RMB. So instead of receiving 697, which was what the supplier was thinking for, they were actually receiving 717. So 20 RMB more, which is their buffer. And at that time, of course, there was not any conversation about dropping prices or anything. But then we go to September through December, because since June last year, the RMB started its appreciating trend, and then the dollar RMB rate started dropping. So these are Zhejiang, Guangdong, and Jiangsu. So these suppliers, what we've seen is that they're mostly more open to RMB payment from overseas. And in general, it's not a new topic for them to receive RMB. Also, when you're a major client of the supplier, you're moving good volumes or have a good relationship, then normally the suppliers would be more open as well to be able to invoice you in RMB and then adapt themselves. Also, another thing that we've seen is that a lot of suppliers, because they're already selling to Southeast Asia or countries that are sanctioned by the US, like Russia or Iran, then they are already invoicing in RMB for these countries. So they have some practice of actually working in RMB. But of course, this is not a one size fits all, right? So there are industries that even though it's based in China, but because they're buying a lot of raw materials abroad, then they consider their base currency as USD. So obviously in those cases, it wouldn't make sense for the client to pay in RMB, but they would have to stick to USD. This is, for instance, for buyers of automobile tires, because the rubber is sourced from overseas. then actually the suppliers are directly pricing USD as their base currency. So the last slide of this part regarding importers buying from China is what are the common issues that you could get as an importer from the suppliers when exploring possibility of directly paying into RMB. So the first and most important is about whether the supplier can lose their tax benefit. So all the goods that are manufactured in China, they are subject to a VAT payment. But if you export abroad and then you receive the payments from overseas, then you can apply for the tax office for a rebate of those VAT. So a lot of suppliers, they have the misunderstanding. Okay, so if I export in RMB and I receive RMB, that's my local currency, would I lose my VAT rebate? So actually that's not the case. As long as you receive this RMB from outside China, it's also considered as a foreign currency, and you can as well get your VAT rebate. Another common issue is whether they will have to do more paperwork with their bank, but this should be easier now based on the new guideline that was released last year from PBOC, which I explained previously. And the last but not the least are suppliers, which is a very common practice, suppliers that actually work through offshore accounts in Hong Kong or elsewhere. So even though the products are manufactured in China, they rather have an offshore account because there are no capital controls. So for these suppliers, effectively, there are some operational issues to sending RMB directly from Hong Kong or overseas to China. But there are also ways to address this, which I won't really go into detail here, but I'm happy to clarify further through email. Now going to the exporter side, right? If I'm a UK exporter looking to sell or already selling into China, what do I need to take into account? Because as most of us know, there are currently strict capital controls in mainland China to move money inside and out. So a remark that I need to make here. So notice that I have said mainland China, because even though Hong Kong is part of China, these restrictions don't apply for Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, you still have a free movement of funds. That's why a lot of companies, they set up a presence in Hong Kong, especially because it's super easy to set up any subsidiary in China, in Hong Kong. To set up a company, it just takes you a week or less. So going back to mainland China, right? If you're an exporter, what are the things that you need to take into account? And can your buyers in China directly send you money outside? Okay, so right now, if you're a business, the categories that the Chinese regulator allows to move money from China to outside are cross-border trade of goods, cross-border trade of services. So here we're talking about like travel, logistics, then overseas education. So if there is like a universities agreement or like for private, if you're a student that you're gonna study overseas and you need to pay for your tuitions, or your parents in China need to pay, and also overseas conferences. So all these categories, they're actually standard categories allowed by the Chinese regulator to send money out of China. So as long as you submit the relevant documentation to your bank when you make the payment, then they'll be able to send the money out. So if you're an exporter that sells directly to mainland China and invoices directly a company in mainland China, you're gonna be able to receive these funds from your buyer in China directly. And there's not any cap on amount or anything. Then for individual persons outside these categories that we mentioned, there's actually a foreign quota of 50,000 USD or equivalent per year, which everyone can use. So every citizen in China, Chinese national, can use for traveling overseas, for education, for shopping. But this is capped at 50,000 USD. If we are looking at other categories of sending money from China to outside, for instance, if I want to, like, as a Chinese individual or company, do an investment abroad, for instance, then that needs a special approval from the foreign exchange regulator in China, which is called SAFE. So here I have tried to provide practical examples of what I have touched in my previous slide, because we actually get a lot of clients that are doing business with China and ask us about, oh, why my client has problems to send me the money directly from China. So what are the cons and can't? UK exporter selling chemicals and sending them to mainland China. In this case, because the destination of goods is directly mainland China, and your mainland China counterparty is paying you directly, as I said, there are no restrictions at all. The problem comes when, let's say, in my cons, where the example that I list, UK exporter selling chemicals to mainland China, but actually I'm sending them to Hong Kong and not to mainland China. So because there's a disalignment between where I'm sending the goods, which is Hong Kong, and who is the counterparty paying me, which is based in mainland China. In this case, your client in China won't be able to pay you because we cannot see a goods that has been received directly in mainland China. So this is pretty much like something not allowed by the regulator, and there will be difficulties to send these funds in a compliant way through a bank. Then another example, right? China travel agent that works with Chinese customers that want to travel to UK, and then they work with a UK travel agent. So in this case, this China travel agent would be able to pay into the UK bank account, and also there will be like no restrictions. Or to be a bit quicker here, right? Consumer in China that is buying from a UK clothing website. So here you would have a limit of up to 50,000 USD equivalent per annum that you'll be able to pay. But if you're Chinese, or if you're a UK company that wants to receive an investment from an investor in China, this is not within the allowed category of the Chinese regulator. So that doesn't mean that it's impossible to send the money out, but it does mean that your counterpart in China would need to go through a lot of paperwork and file a separate authorization with the Chinese regulator in order to get allowance for that. And another example, and the last one, Chinese subsidiary of a UK company, right? So you set up an entity in China and you want to repatriate the profits that you're generating into your Chinese company. So this also needs a special application from the regulator in China. And it's not like a straightforward that you can be, let's say, sending your profits from your Chinese subsidiary to your parent company on a monthly basis. It needs also like a special regulation. So one of the solutions that IBRI provides, but this is considering that it's within the authorized categories by the regulator, which I mentioned previously, like cross-border trade of goods or services. We enable the possibility of, if you're an exporter in the UK, to directly invoice in RMB to your buyers in China. So actually, even though Hong Kong, it's also considered cross-border from the China perspective, but because it's next to mainland China, and also it's in the same time zone, we can provide an RMB account to our clients so that they can directly receive RMB from their clients in China in Hong Kong. And this is an account that is under the name of the exporter, so we make sure that it matches with the trade records. So by that, the exporter can actually receive the money much faster, right? Because there's not any time difference, and sending funds from mainland China to Hong Kong, it's almost instant. So how it works is that IBRI would provide a bank account in RMB under the name of the exporter in Hong Kong. In mainland China, then the importer would pay RMB directly through their bank or through their local payment service provider. And then this RMB would arrive into the exporter's account in Hong Kong almost instantly. And then because of the time difference, because there are right now 7 hours time difference because summertime between China and the UK, then IBRI could convert this RMB directly into pounds and will directly credit these funds into the exporter's designated bank account in the UK so that they will receive it in the morning time UK, so that funds will be received instantly. So again, this is a solution to help increase the speed of payment and also save on some bank commissions, but it doesn't really solve the problem of if you cannot, well, your counterparty cannot send funds from China to outside because it's not within the regulatory categories. This is also something that us from IBRI, we won't be able to help. So this is all from my presentation. Now we will give some time for the Q&A. So I'll pass it back over to you, Kim.
Great, thank you very much, Isabel. We are actually running quite short of time. So what I'll do is we will I think most of the questions previously we received have been more or less covered in your presentation. So let's look at the live questions. In the live questions, these are very much related to payment outside China, but also on euro. So the first one is, what about RMB and euro? We offer our Chinese customers an option to switch from US dollar to euro. Isabel, you can also see this in the Q&A panel. So that's the first one. The second one related, it says we prefer to be paid in euro as we export to PRC. But if we accept to be paid in RMB, we would be exposed, right? And any suggestions? And then the final one, live question also, it's would you need a Hong Kong legal entity to trade in CNH?
Yeah, so regarding the first two questions, right? So basically, yeah, I mean, you could also export in euro, but the problem is what I mentioned, that the clients will normally not be able to hedge themselves. So if there's a reverse trend and then the RMB start depreciating, then obviously like it will be more expensive for them to buy from your company, right? So then if you invoice them directly in RMB and then you fix the rate, it'll be easier for them because they'll be paying directly in local currency. And also like there'll be less paperwork from the bank because it's local currency.
Okay.
And then another question, the third one that Johan was asking. So the solution that I was providing about receiving RMB directly in Hong Kong, right? So if we work from IBRI, for instance, because we have licenses in UK, Hong Kong, you don't really need to set up an entity in Hong Kong. Directly through us, we can provide you a virtual account in Hong Kong without having a local presence there, and you can receive those funds in Hong Kong because it's a virtual account. But even though if you were to consider setting up an entity in Hong Kong, as I mentioned previously, it's quite easy to set up an entity. It will take you like 7 days or less.
Okay, great. So I think these are some of the questions we received before, but I think you've covered most of them. I just want to add that when you're looking to receive money out of China as an exporter, you need to, of course, first understand all the regulations, which Isabel has covered quite a bit. But also you need to understand the process with your Chinese partner side, for example, and understand the tax consideration. For example, there will be a withholding tax. Typically, wherever pay the money out would hold that from you. Then there's this double tax treaty between UK and China, so you are able to offset that withholding tax in the UK if you're paying your corporate tax, if you're making profit, for example. So those things, it's really worthwhile to understand. And we do have tax advisors on our Crayfish IO platform that can offer a quick consulting session, but also the actual tax work from China as well. And then also to understand your partner, what's their motivation? Because sometimes the partner wants to delay paying you, so they put the excuse on the regulation or the process, but in fact, it may not be the case. I have an example to share that one of our previous clients had a very big amount payment from China. It was about $750,000, so it's a massive amount because it's one of the big licensing fee. So we already know, the client already know that there will be 90 days payment needed for the first time to allow for set up at a local the government authority, say called State Administration of Foreign Exchange, and then the banking process. So they have sort of considered that 90 days. However, after 90 days, they still did not get the payment. So, and they were just waiting until later they come to us, and then we actually inquired with the Chinese company. Chinese company said, "Oh, we haven't got the original invoice." So we said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Oh, the UK company sent them a PDF invoice, but that's not acceptable. It needs to be original." However, that request or that feedback has never been given to the UK company, and therefore, while the UK client was just waiting to be paid, the Chinese partner was waiting for original invoice to be received, which were never asked. So that then, of course, delayed the whole process for another month. So this is just an example to say you needed to actually monitor that process and understand and challenge, find out what you can do to speed up that. I think out of these questions, Isabel, are there anything else you want to sort of add to that?
No, thanks, Tim. I think what you covered was very complimentary to what I said. So yeah, there's nothing else from my side. And if there are like further questions, then I think we can follow through email.
Great. So just very quickly, there are a lot of free resources for those of you who are interested to know more about doing business in China, whether it's from the marketing side or is it from the operational side or legal aspects. So do visit our website from time to time. But actually, we update it every week. And if you have not received our newsletter, please do sign up. There's a button on the homepage that you can do. And do get in touch with us. And if there's any more questions that we have not answered today, please do let us know and we will get back to you. Again, thank you very much with Isabel for coming and sharing all this very useful insight on RMB. And I hope that helped you in thinking about what you can do to prevent yourself from the exposure of RMB appreciation, but also allow you to negotiate better and with your suppliers as well.